Hi friends, my name is Angela and welcome to my YouTube channel. Historical fiction is one of my favourite genres to read, second only to literary fiction. There is just something so special about the way an author can conjure up an atmosphere of another time and place through really lively characters that feel real. I think historical fiction works best when it has an emotional pull to it as well, not just the factual information of that period of time. It's a perfect balance for me of learning something new and being completely swept up in this person's story. What I realised last year was that the historical fiction I love and stays with me isn't the biggest or the most dramatic stories, but it's the ones that feel deeply human. So today I'm sharing 6 historical fiction books that I read last year that have stayed with me ever since. They aren't all necessarily 5-star reads, but these are the books that really immersed me in another time and place. They lingered and reminded me why I love this genre so much. These stories took me everywhere, from 9th century Europe to wartime hospitals, but each one offered something truly unforgettable. Rapture from Emily Maguire. This was the first book I read in 2025 and it completely swept me away. It's a beautifully written retelling of the legend of Pope Joan, and it set a new benchmark for me in terms of elegant writing and complete originality. We follow Agnes, who is a brilliant but very unconventional girl for her time. She is the daughter of an English priest and they live in 9th century Mainz. At 18, she disguises herself as a man with the help of a Benedictine monk, choosing a life of scholarship in the church over the other options available to women at that time. As John the Englishman, she becomes this renowned scholar within the Catholic Church and travels through Europe and astonishes all sorts of leaders with her intellect and understanding of religious texts. What makes this book so special is the writing. It is elegant is one word, poetic is another, lyrical, and the setting feels really fresh. It's not often, I don't know if I've read another book set in the 9th century, so it is an interesting time itself. And it is a book I will continue to recommend because I don't see people talking about this enough. I think it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize. Emily Maguire is an Australian writer. Her writing is beautiful. But if you love immersive historical fiction set in lesser known times, this one is a rare gem. Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This was our read-along that we did last year, my very first read-along, and it blew us all away. This book is inspired by the true story of the last woman executed in Iceland in 1829, and it follows Agnes Magnusdóttir, who has been convicted of murder. While awaiting her execution date, she's sent away to live with a family and work on their farm. And as the story unfolds through chapters with her haunting inner dialogue and other perspectives, including the young priest who has been chosen to prepare her for her upcoming execution, it's just riveting. As the family and the priest get to know Agnes, they start to realise there is more to her story than the sensational story they have come to know. It's not a fast-paced novel, but the atmosphere is electric. The emotional depth, the quiet tension, this is a story about the last woman executed. You know what's going to happen, but it doesn't make the story any less engaging. And the stark Icelandic landscape make this a really riveting experience. It is the kind of book you think should be a winter read, and I did read it in winter, but it is predominantly set in high summer in Iceland. So don't feel that you have to wait until a particular time to read it. It will be good at any time. Hannah Kent's writing is both lyrical and restrained and really deeply human. While I couldn't stop reading, and I finished the book a lot faster than I probably wanted to, being a read-along, it's not a page turner, it's more of an experience. And I guarantee it will stay with you long after you finish reading it. If you enjoy audiobooks, I highly recommend this one as well. I listened to a couple of chapters of Agnes's inner dialogue on the audiobook and it was a game changer. The next one you may not have heard much about, and that is The Winter Soldier by Daniel Mason. This was published in 2018. After falling in love with Daniel's writing in North Woods, I was very eager to pick up a new book of his. The Winter Soldier is set in World War I, and it follows Lucius, who is a medical student in Vienna, and he is fast-tracked out of his training to become a doctor and rushed out into service in the war. He's sent to this remote, understaffed field hospital in the mountains and quickly learns that he is not equipped to deal with the things that he is supposed to be treating. There's only another single nurse that he's able to lean on, and through her he starts to learn a different kind of medicine under extreme conditions, and he forms a really strong bond with this nurse. The pivot point for this book is that one day everything changes when a severely injured soldier is brought in and Lucius makes a decision that changes all of their lives. What I find really interesting about Daniel Mason's work is that he is a physician himself, and I believe he wrote his first book while he was in his final year of medical studies. It's captivating, but it lends a realism to his writing because he is writing as a physician, but it is in a way that is very easy to digest and understand. But it makes the medical information feel very authentic. And there is a strong thread through here about the early understandings of what we now call post-traumatic stress. This is a quiet, character-driven story about love, guilt, the long shadow that war casts, and it also has a number of pages of the beautiful nature writing that I fell in love with in the first place in Daniel's other book, North Woods. One that you most definitely have heard of, The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I finally picked this up during the coldest part of our winter in Australia, and it was the perfect atmospheric read. It's set in Maine in North America in 1789, so it's only a short time after America's independence from Britain, and it starts with the body of a man who was found frozen in the river. Our main character is Martha Ballard, and she is a renowned healer in her area, and she is called on to examine the body, and she quickly identifies who this man is, who is someone who was only just in the recent past accused of rape, which makes her feel that this is not an accidental death, and it takes us on this winter-long investigation that exposes a lot of truths and secrets within the community. This book really surprised me. At face value, I expected historical fiction, but I also got a love story, a courtroom drama, and part mystery. Martha is a really great protagonist. She is quiet and determined and a little defiant, and the portrait of early America really feels quite grounded. I always love learning the impetus behind stories like this, and at the end of the book, Ariel does go into the original story of Martha Ballard, who was a real person in history, and how her diaries were lent on to form the bones of this book. It is really well paced, it is immersive and very engaging. Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Hamnet is a historical fiction book that feels very intimate as opposed to being a sweeping saga. Set in Elizabethan England in Shakespeare's household, the story focuses on the life and death of Shakespeare's son, Hamnet, and the impact that that loss has on the family. However, rather than centering the story around Shakespeare, the central character is Agnes, his wife. She is vividly brought to life by O'Farrell, and Shakespeare is not actually mentioned by name in this book. I really think the emotional depth of this book was what surprised me. It explores grief, motherhood, marriage, and how life is so fragile, but it is done in such a quiet way with this undercurrent of intensity. O'Farrell's writing is really beautiful, very atmospheric. It is very easy to place yourself in the shoes of her characters. She writes them very well. And the grief in this novel is genuinely affecting. I think this is historical fiction at its most human, and it is emotionally powerful. The Gurnsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows. This is a very different type of historical fiction, much lighter in tone, but nonetheless memorable. It is set just after World War II, and it takes place over letters, and it's an epistolary novel, and the letters are between a young writer in London and residents of the island of Gurnsey, which is set in the English Channel. And these people in Gurnsey lived through a German occupation during the war. Through these letters, we learn their stories and we learn about the hardship they experienced, but also the resilience of the community and how they found ways to get through that hardship, including starting their own literary society. The book is really warm and charming and very inviting. You want to be part of this world. It balances very well that difficult history of World War II along with friendship and humour and hope, and it gave me a really strong sense of nostalgia, not for the time period itself, but for the way the community got together and that hope that comes with it. These books really reminded me that the past and historical fiction itself is not really about the past, but it's more about the people. The grief of a mother in Elizabethan England or the decisions of a doctor in wartime, the emotions are the same. And that's what makes historical fiction so immediate and powerful for me. Looking back at this list, what I realise is that the type of historical fiction that really stays with me is the type that is immersive, that is character-driven and deeply human. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and perhaps just leave one of your favourite historical fiction books from last year in the comments below, because I know this is one genre I will never stop reading. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful week of reading ahead, and I'll speak with you soon. Bye.